Friends, we will continue the topic, and we were discussing the important points in the topic of free consent. Now, there we are with the item of frauds. Fraud is something which you are also going to study in the topic of auditing as you proceed to the IPCC. Basically, as an auditors, we are always interested to find out the errors and also the frauds. So in that context, what constitutes the fraud? The conceptual clarity is most important. Of course, this is only a matter of revision. So what is the meaning of the fraud? The term fraud means false representation of the fact made by the party to the contract. So misrepresentation you are making. Earlier we might also have studied about the misrepresentation. What we say, misrepresentation with a fraudulent intent to deceive somebody constitutes the fraud, whereas with ignorance and all also you can have certain situations where misrepresentation is possible. So that is not by a stranger to the contract, that is, this misrepresentation of the fact is made by whom? Not by the stranger, by the party to the contract only is making the misrepresentation, and then with a view to deceive the other party. This is most important. Malified intent is most important thing. So with a view to deceive the other party who has acted on the basis of such representation and has been actually deceived. So if we observe this meaning of the fraud, what it appears is fraud is something which is a misrepresentation which is made by the one of the parties to the contract with a malified intent to deceive others, and actually the other person also got or suffered a loss out of this. These are the basic requirements for the fraud. Then friends, what are the essential elements of the fraud? That is, first, who commits the fraud? Party to the contract will commit the fraud. What is a fraud? False representation of the fact or misrepresentation of the fact, and then intention to deceive the other party will be there in case of the fraud, an act of other party on the basis of such representation. Not only intent to deceive, actual deceiving should also happen, and the other party should suffer the loss. In that case, what are the effects of the fraud? First thing is, the party who suffered on account of the fraud can very well get out of the contract, resign the contract. And then friends, rights to insist upon the performance. That is, the other person who got deceived, if he feels, he can also insist on the performance, and the person who suffered from the loss can also insist for the damages also is a point, friends. So these are the rights which will come to the other party who got deceived out of the fraud is a point to be remembered. Then friends, silence does not amount to the fraud. Silence does not amount to the fraud. Earlier also we studied on this point. That is, general rule is what? According to the explanation to section 17, mere silence as to the facts likely to affect the willingness of a person to enter into a contract is not a fraud. Of course, there are certain exceptions to the general rule, where you need to speak out and you are keeping silent, then silence is equal to fraud. Where there is no need, statutory obligation to speak out, your silence cannot be construed as a fraud. Then friends, what are the exception? Where parties stand in a fiduciary relationship, parent-child, trustee-beneficiary, where the silence itself is equal to the speech, that is half-truth. In that situation, what we say, silence amounts to fraud where there is a requirement to speak out and you are keeping silent. But all times it is not correct on our part to say that mere silence as to the facts likely to affect the willingness of a person cannot altogether be construed as a fraud as a point. Then misrepresentation. What is misrepresentation? The term misrepresentation means a false representation of the fact made by a party to the contract. Of course, he is doing it innocently, not with a malified intent to defraud others, or non-disclosure of a material fact without any intention to deceive the other party who acted upon the basis of such as a point. So, what is the distinction between your fraud and misrepresentation? In both the cases, we are giving to the other party a false fact, but in case of the fraud there is a malified intent, whereas in case of the misrepresentation there is no malified intent to deceive the others, is the point to be remembered. Then friends, essential elements of misrepresentation. What are the essential elements of the misrepresentation? Misrepresentation should be made by a party to the contract, not by the stranger to the contract, and it should be a false representation of the facts, and then it is to induce the other party to enter into contract and without any intention to deceive the other party. There is no intention to deceive, only to make the other person to enter into contract. Induce, not include. Induce the other party to enter into contract without any intention to deceive the other party. Act of other party on the basis of such representation, necessarily the other party should have acted based on such a misrepresentation of the fact. Then we call that as a misrepresentation. What are the effects of misrepresentation? Right to rescind the contract is there, similar to the fraud. What are the rights that the person affected gets? Right to insist on the performance is also there, but right for damage is not there in case of misrepresentation, whereas in case of the fraud, right for damages is also there, as a point to be noted. What are the effects of the mistake? Under the Indian law, mistake of Indian law, contract is not voidable because everyone is supposed to know the law of his country. Let us suppose if this mistake is related to a particular Indian law, then on the basis of the fact that there is a mistake that is represented which is related to the Indian law, can we resign the contract? No, because every citizen need to know the law of their countries. So on that pretext, what we say, contract is not voidable because everyone is supposed to know the law of his country. And then friends, mistake of foreign law, yes, you can't expect me to know the laws of America or England. In that situation, if there is a mistake of a foreign law, it is treated as a mistake of the fact that his contract is void if both the parties are under a mistake as to the foreign law, because one cannot expect to know the law of the other country is a point. Then friends, in case of bilateral mistakes as to the essential fact, that is where both the parties to an agreement are under a mistake to the essential fact, then the agreement becomes void. Bilateral mistakes are always void because of the point that there is no what you call one understanding. Because when we studied the contract, what we said, what the offerer is offering, what the acceptor is accepting, there should be same understanding of it. So in case of the bilateral mistakes, what we are saying is both parties to an agreement are under the mistake to the essential fact. So once about the essential fact, when the understanding is not the same and also it is a mistake on both the parties, so we say bilateral mistakes are always void. In case of unilateral mistake, where one of the party to the agreement is under the mistake as to the identity of the person, then the person contracted with, then the agreement is void. As to the nature of the contract, then also the agreement is void. As to the other matters, the agreement is not void. So in case of the unilateral mistakes, it is going to be void only if the mistake is in relation to the identity of the person or the nature of the contract. For any other thing, the unilateral mistake, on account of the unilateral mistake, the contract will not become void. This is very, very important. Take it for granted. Bilateral mistakes are always void. Unilateral mistakes only in two situations, where mistake is in relation to the identity of the person or in respect to the nature of the contract, then it becomes a void one. Whereas in other kinds of mistakes, if they happens to be the unilateral mistakes, then the agreement is not void, as a point to be remembered. With that, friends, I completed the revision part of the topic of free consent with the help of important points. Now I move to the practical problems. This is the second time revision, for the simple reason the same points again and again we are discussing, so that the concept will go into the young brains who are listening for the first time the law. Friends, carefully observe the things. X beats Y and compels him to sell his house for rupees 1 lakh. Y agrees to sell his house to Y. Y signs the necessary documents for the sale of the house and receives the payment later on. Later on, Y wants to avoid the contract. Will he succeed? So what the point? Consent is not obtained freely. Under coercion only consent is obtained. Definitely, once you give your consent under coercion, it is not going to be a valid contract. But the point of interest is, under the coercion you give your consent, subsequently you have done something accepting it, then after doing something you can't go back on the fact that my consent is not a free consent. Because if you want to avoid the contract, you should not have taken the money, whereas you have taken the money and later on want to resign the contract. That is not permissible. But of course, friends, you have to write with the help of the sections. So sections to which the given problem relates to is section 15 and 72 of the Indian Contract Act. So decision here is Y can avoid the contract on the count of coercion, but he will have to return 1 lakh which he has received from X. Yes, to this extent what we say, if you are prepared to give back that 1 lakh, then you can resign. Reason, Y's consent is not free, as it has been obtained by committing an act which is forbidden by the Indian Penal Code. So the question only requires, by doing what the contract can be rescinded, whatever the benefit that the party who gave the consent under coercion got. What is the benefit he got? He received 1 lakh. That in case if he is going to pay back, then he can resign the contract on the basis of the, consent is not obtained at on a free, it is not a free consent. Well, Then friends, X threatens to kill Y, second situation. X threatens to kill Y. If he does not sell his house to X for 1 lakh, Y assigns the necessary document of sale of house and receives the payment. Later on, Y wants to avoid the contract. Will he succeed? How second question differs from the first question, friends? In case of the first question, what does it? X is beats Y and compels him to sell the house for rupees 1 lakh. Y agrees to sell his house, necessary documents for the sale of the house, and receives the payment. Later on, Y wants to avoid the contract. Whereas here, X threatened to kill Y if he does not sell his house to X for rupees 1 lakh. Y assigns the necessary documents. Later on, Y wants to avoid the contract. What we say is, that is, Y can avoid the contract on the ground of the coercion, but he will have to return 1 lakh. Of course, same repetitive question. In case of question number 1 and 2, the same point we are with. That is, in fact, the same question. That is, once consent is not a free consent, such a contract can very well be rescinded, provided whatever the benefit you are getting, you are going to repay it as a point. Then third question, that is, X threatens to kill Y's son if Y does not sell his house to X for rupees 1 lakh. Y signs the necessary documents for the sale of the house and receives the payment. Later on, Y wants to avoid. Yes, point here is that the threat or coercion may not be directly to a person who is entered into a contract, even if it is given to the people who are related to the person who is entering into the contract. That also amounts to the coercion. And the answer is simple, that is, in this case, very well you can avoid the contract or resign the contract at a later date. Only thing that we require is whatever the benefit that you have already received need to be returned back as a point. Now fourth question, X threatens to kill Y's son if Y does not sell his house to Z for 1 lakh. Y signs the necessary documents for the sale of the house and receives the payment. Later on, Y wants to avoid the contract. In all these situations also, the only answer that we have to write is, since consent is not a free one, it can be very well be resigned, and consent is obtained by an act which is prohibited by the Indian Penal Code. It amounts to the coercion. So consent, since it is obtained by coercion, it can be very well be resigned as long as the benefit that the party received, he is going to return it. Then friends, fifth question, X, an agent, refused to hand over the account books of Y, the principal, to the new agent appointed in his place unless the principal released him from all liabilities. The principal had to give a release deed as demanded. Is this release deed binding upon the principal? Friends, here try to understand. I am the agent, you are the principal. In our relationship, there are certain things for which I am liable as an agent. Now you want to terminate my agency and want to give it to new person. What I am insisting, that you please release me from all the liabilities. Other way around, I will not hand over the books to the new agent. Is it not a threat? Is it not a blackmail kind of thing? Yes. And here point is, during the course, during the time when I am the agent, whatever the obligations I am into, even after the discontinuation of the agency in respect of the acts which I made during the agency period, I am liable. Just by a release deed, the things cannot, I cannot get relieved. So now look at the answer. Section 15 says, Y can avoid the contract on the ground of coercion because agent is blackmailing him by saying that I am not going to hand over the books to your new agent and all. Y's consent is not free as it has been obtained by unlawful detaining of the property. This point is most important. Coercion बोल के बोल सकते, मगर how it became a coercion? Because it has, that is consent is not free as it has been obtained by unlawfully detaining the property. So property of the principal is there with the agent, and the agent says, unless you sign the release deed and releasing me from all my liabilities, I am not going to hand over, means that is it amounts to unlawful possession of the property as a point. Then friends, question number 6, the government of a state gave a threat of attachment against the property of Y for the recovery of the fine due from Y's son. Y paid the fine. Advice, why? See, point here is, there is a father, there is a son, and son required to what you call pay some fine because he committed some mistake or fraud and all, and state government says what? We are going to attach the father's property. Now father is paying the fines on behalf of the son. Can father go to a court of law tomorrow? Yes, because state is forcing, making a coercion. So Y could recover the amount paid on the ground of coercion. Reason, Y's consent is not free as it has been obtained by threatening to detain the property unlawfully is a point. Actually, for the acts and deeds of my son, I am not responsible, but the government authorities threatened me, that saying that we are going to take over, make attachments to your property. So under a pressure he has paid that amount, so he can always go to a court of law and can recover that particular money as a point, friends. Then question number 7, X by a threat to commit suicide induced Y, his wife, and Z, his son, to execute a release deed in favor of his brother in respect of certain property. Are Y and Z bound by this release deed? Answer definitely is no, for the simple reason, since the consent is not free and it is obtained by under coercion, that is it is obtained by threatening to commit an act which is deemed to be forbidden by the Indian Contracts Act, Indian Penal Code is a point. So in that situation also the contract can be well rescinded on the basis that consent is not obtained free. Then 8th question, X, an illiterate old man of about 90 years, physically infirm and mentally in distress, executed a gift deed of his properties in favor of Y, his nearest relative, who was looking after his daily needs and managing his cultivation. Is X bound by this gift deed? No, for the simple reason that Y's consent is not free. When somebody is on the bed or mentally distressed and all, at that point of time there is every possibility to make an undue influence. So in that situation, whatever the gift deed that X made can be very well be revoked, can very well be rescinded, because it is that the consent is not free, it is given under an undue influence is a point. The 9th question, friends, X, a poor Hindu widow, was in great need of money to establish her right to maintenance. She took a loan of 1500 bearing a rate of interest of 100% per annum. Is this transaction consignable? So point of interest here, friends, when somebody is in distress, so unduly influencing them, if you make them to enter into some contract where it is unreasonable, see, nobody pays 100% interest, isn't it or not? So this transaction appears to be unconsignable. Reason, not only the rate of interest is too high, but also the lender has used the circumstances on a poor Hindu widow to obtain the unfair advantage. So contract can be very well be rescinded. Then 10th question, X sells by auction to Y a horse which X knows to be unsound. The horse appears to be sound, but X knows about the unsoundness of the horse. Is this contract valid in each of the following alternatives? X says nothing, the unsoundness of the horse to Y. Case B, if X says nothing about it to Y, who is X daughter who has just come of age. Case C, if Y says to X, if you do not deny it, I shall assume that the horse is sound. X says nothing. So here how the answers we are developing. First thing is, like, this contract is valid when, that is, X says nothing, the unsoundness of the horse to Y. How come this contract became a valid? Mere silence as to the facts likely to affect the willingness of a person to enter into a contract is not fraud. So here it is not the duty of the seller to disclose the defects. Definitely something which is apparent, one has to use their common sense whenever they do the contracts. Everything the seller will not tell. So mere silence cannot be construed as a fraud. So in that context, this contract is a valid contract. Whereas in case B, contract is not valid. Why? It is X's duty to tell Y about the unsoundness of the horse because of a fiduciary relationship. After all, the relationship between them is what? Father and the daughter. In that situation, definitely daughter believes on whatever the father says. So father, using that fiduciary position, cannot deceive the daughter. So on that basis, what we say, that X silence is equal to speech and hence amounts to a fraud. Whereas if it is a third party other than not related party, whenever I make sale, I always try to project the good parts of my goods. I will never tell bad parts of my goods. That does not mean that if there is a bad part in the goods, automatically that contract becomes invalid. Is not a point. Then friends, in case C, contract is not valid because X silence is equivalent to speech and hence amounts to fraud. That is, some other person who is entering into contract asked for the information. When they are asking for the information, you are keeping that information secret, definitely amounts to fraud, is a point. When they are not asked, you are not saying, does not amount to any fraud, is a point. Got the point? See, let us suppose Karthik came and want to purchase my laptop. He is looking at the laptop and purchase the laptop. Later he cannot cry. Chakravarti is not giving any information about the defects of the laptop. In the second situation is, Karthik came and asked, sir, first you please tell what are all the problems with your laptop. Then I kept my silence. Then definitely silence amounts to speech and I am not giving you the information, means definitely it is a fraud. You can very well avoid the contract as a point. 11th question. X chartered a ship to Y which was described in the charter party and was represented to him as being not more than 2,800 tonnage register. It turned out that registered tonnage was 3045. Y refused to accept the ship in fulfillment of the charter's party. Is Y's action valid? See, after all friends, this is something a belief, not a misrepresentation. So Y was entitled to avoid the chartered party. Reason is X made an erroneous statement as to the tonnage. But only thing is, it cannot be considered as a fraud for the simple reason there is no intent to deceive. So in case of misrepresentation, what we said, the party has got a right to rescind the contracts. So very well, Y was entitled to avoid the chartered party since X made an erroneous statement as to the tonnage. Then 12th question friends, X is having two horses, one is white and another is black. X offers to sell his black horse to Y. Y, not knowing that X has two horses, thinks white horse and agrees to buy the horse. Is this agreement valid? Friends, here what is happening is a mistake of what is it? The identity part of it. So Section 20 says this agreement is void. Both the parties to an agreement are under the mistake as to the matter of the fact essential to the agreement as a point. So once it's a bilateral mistake, very well it becomes a void one is what, because both the parties are under the mistake about the fact of that particular agreement. 13th question. X offers to sell his black horse to Y. Y agrees to buy that horse. It turns out that the horse was dead at the time of bargain, though neither party was aware of the fact. Is this agreement valid? Here also, since it's a bilateral mistake, it can be very well be treated as a void agreement as a point. 14th question. X buys a painting believing it to be worth of 1 lakh, while in fact its worth is only 10,000. Is it a valid thing? The contract is valid because it is only an erroneous opinion as to the value of the thing which forms the subject matter of the agreement, and is not treated as a mistake relating to the matter of the facts. Here X will have to blame himself for ignorance of the true value of the painting. So it's an unilateral mistake not related to the identity or the facts. So any other mistakes, if it happens to be unilateral mistake, definitely it is not a void agreement, it is still a valid agreement only, is a point to be remembered, friends. And then 15th question. X offers to sell a painting to Y, which X known is a copy of a well-known masterpiece. Y, thinking that the painting is the original one, decides to buy it at a very high price. Is this a valid? Yes, the contract is valid because the erroneous opinion as to the value of the thing which forms the subject matter of the agreement is not treated as a mistake. See, valuation is something which differs from person to person. So in that situation, you can't say that it is a misrepresentation of the facts. So one has to blame himself. And suppose somebody sold a particular item for 1 lakh, it is for you who is going to purchase to value it, whether it is 1 lakh or 10,000 or 5,000. Later on, knowing that the value is less, can you go to a shopkeeper and say that I purchased from you a particular pen for 10 rupees, whereas my friend says its value is only 6 rupees, so now I don't want this pen, please take back. Will he take back? No, because it is your own mistake. You have to be blamed for yourself for the ignorance of the true value of what you are purchasing. So on that basis, no contract becomes a invalid contract. That such contracts becomes valid contracts only. 16th question. P inquired about the price of the rifles from H, suggested that he might buy 50 rifles. On receiving the quotation, P telegraphed, sent 3 rifles. But because of the mistake of the telegraph authorities, the message transmitted was send the rifles. H dispatched the 50 rifles, P accepted 3 rifles and returned the remaining 47 rifles. Is this agreement valid? What we say, this agreement is valid. Both seller and the buyer made a mistake regarding the quantity of the subject matter. Only with respect to the identity or the fact, if the mistake is there, then it becomes a void kind of thing. Whereas since it is only regarding the quantity, definitely this is something a valid agreement only. 17th question. X entered into a contract for hiring of a room for witnessing the coronation process of Edward VII. Unknown to both the parties, the procession had already been cancelled. So this is something that both parties are under the mistake. It's a bilateral mistake. Definitely bilateral mistakes, already what we discussed, the agreement becomes a void as a point. Question number 18, friends. X sold oats to Y sample, and Y, thinking that they were old oats, purchased them. In fact, the oats were new. Y is bound by the contracts. Why is bound by the contract? Because a contract is not voidable because of the unilateral mistake, and that too also, that is, mistake is only of one party to the agreement. As to the matter of the fact, here Y will have to blame himself for ignorance of the wrong judgment. So if you are making a wrong judgment and then entering into an agreement, and it is a mistake which happens to be a unilateral mistake, then friends, contract is not a void contract. They become valid contracts only, is a point to be remembered. Then friends, 19th question. One Blencorn, knowing Blencorn and Co. was a reputed customers of Lindsay and Co. placed an order on Lindsay and Co. by imitating the signature of the Blencorn and Co. The goods were then sold to Cunley, an innocent buyer. A suit was filed by Lindsay and Co. against Cunley for recovery of the goods. Discuss the legal position. What we say, section 72 of the act comes into play. Cunley did not get any good title. Hence, he must return the goods to make the payment for the same. See, there is one reputed company called as X&N Company, another reputed company called as Y&N Company. X&N Company regularly supplies the goods to the Y&N Company. Now, some party forging the signatures of the Y&N Company placed an order with X&N Company. X&N Company supplied the goods. Now, that means what? Fraudulently a contract is entered and goods is received. So later on, what can happen? Contract can be very well be rescinded. So there was no contact between Lindsay and Company and Cunley, as Lindsay never intended to contact with the Blenkman as a point. Then friends, a woman by falsely misrepresenting her to be wife of a well-known baron. Of course, this question already we discussed, friends. That is a mistake of identity and all. With that, if you are trying to make a contract, that contract will always be void as a point. So broker did not get a good title and hence he must return the goods. There was no contact between the jeweler and the woman, as the jeweler never intended to contact with her. So question I request the students to read, because this is something which we have already discussed. So once by making a what you call misrepresentation of the identity and all, you try to enter into contract, such contract becomes a void as a point. Friends, we will do with the question number 21. S knew that on account of his criticism of the plays in the past, he would not be allowed to have an entry into the performance of a play at a theatre. Of course, this point, this particular case also we discussed earlier, friends. That is, party criticized, and so that is a party to the contracts. That is, here what happened, a cinema theatre is there, suppose. Just to make you to understand, I am saying. A cinema theatre is there. Karthik went to the cinema theatre, loudly raised, this cinema theatre is a waste cinema theatre. Seats are not well, screen is not well, everything is not well. Faltu. And gone away. Then that cinema theatre authority said, next time in case if Karthik is going to come, don't allow that fellow into the theatre. But the Karthik favorite hero's cinema came in that particular theatre. When he tried to get a ticket, they are not selling. So he sent Monica to purchase the tickets, and Monica purchased the tickets, and she came to the class, and Karthik is now going to cinema. Now there they caught Karthik. How you can come? He said, I am already having a ticket. Now is the theatre log, will they get an authority right to push Karthik out of the cinema theatre? Yes, because never they intended to make sale of the ticket to the Karthik, and also a prohibition is already declared by them that you are not supposed to come to the theatre. So you have fraudulently obtained that particular ticket, and they are not interested to have a contract with you, so very well they can rescind on it. So S is not entitled to claim any damages. There was no contact between theatre company and the S, as the theatre company never intended to contract with the S. Then last question, friends, question number 22. X, an old illiterate man, was induced to sign a bill of exchange by means of a false representation that it was mere guarantee. Guarantee बोल के दस्तखत लेके उसके ऊपर bills of exchange लिख दिए आप. So since he is an old person and never there is an intent to sign a bill of exchange, definitely that contract becomes a
what you call invalid thing. Section 22 says what? X is not liable to pay the bill of exchange. X never intend to sign that particular bill of exchange as a point. So with that, to a greater extent, friends, you got an understanding of what is a free consent and all. From chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, multiple choice questions and all will be discussed after the end of the 7th topic. So we have to do with the next topic of chapter 5. Thank you.